And the rest of the tika is fairly, can be understood here. Well, nanu yad vishayakam ajnanam tad vishayaka jnananeva nivartyamedi jnana jnanayoh samana vishayakatva niyamena अन्य ज्ञानाद अन्य विषयक अज्ञान निवृत्तेः अयोगात् कथम ब्रह्म ज्ञानाद ब्रह्म भिन्न जीवगत अध्यासात्मक स्थूल ज्ञान निवृत्ति इति आशंक्य अभेदो भी सूत्रितः इति आह. Idea is that by knowing of one thing, the unearth of that alone can be eliminated. How can by knowledge of Brahman the suffering of the jiva goes away? And so it is suggested that jiva is Brahma alone. ब्रह्म अभेद साधक अध्यासाश्रय हेतु आश्रयत्व हेतु का अनुमान बलादित्यति. यद्यपि जीवो नाम विशिष्टः तद्गतम अध्यासात्मक स्थूल ज्ञानम तद्धेतुकः बन्धश्च तद्गतैव तथापि सैव जीवः शोधिश्चेत् प्रत्यक्ष स्वरूपत्वेन ब्रह्म भिन्नः इति तद् अभेदः तस्माद् विशेष्य अंशम् आदाय समान विषयकत्वं संभवति इति भावः. So even when I know jiva, understand, the thing is that just as in case of that rope and snake, there is two kinds of knowledge. One is what we call samanya ansha, other is vishesha ansha. So when I say this is a snake, that this part belongs to rope, and that is the samanya ansha, and that snake part is what? Is adhyasa or mithya. Similarly also when I say aham jiva, I am jiva, aham samsari, I am samsari, when I say that aham part is what? Is samanya ansha. That belongs to what? That belongs to Brahma. But that samsari, karta, bhokta, sukhi, dukhi, all of that is vishesha ansha. That belongs to what? That belongs to jiva. And therefore, even when I brand myself as a samsari, there is still the knowledge of the samanya ansha of Brahman, meaning Brahman is always known samanyataya, natu visheshataya. So even when I know that object as a snake, this is a very important point. Even when I know that object as a snake, the rope is not totally unknown. Had the rope been totally unknown, had there been utter darkness there, and I did not know anything at all, there would have been no occasion of committing an error of taking the rope to be a snake. And had I known the rope as a rope in the broad daylight, then also the error of snake would not have been committed. So taking the rope to be a snake, that error would not be committed if the rope is totally unknown or rope is totally known. Totally unknown, even samanyataya, that I do not know anything at all, that even there is something, even that I do not know. When that samanya jnanam is not there, adhyasa cannot take place. And if I know the rope as rope, if vishesha jnanam is there, then also adhyasa cannot take place. So under what peculiar conditions that adhyasa or superimposition of a snake takes place is when the samanya ansha of the rope is known and vishesha ansha is not known. If that samanya ansha also were not known, there would have been no adhyasa. If vishesha ansha were known, then also no adhyasa. Samanya ansha is known, vishesha ansha is not known. So also if Atma were totally unknown to me, there would have been no question of taking myself a karta bhokta, just as in deep sleep, where I do not know anything. That time there is no anartha because adhyasa cannot take place. Error cannot be committed if samanya jnanam is not there. And if the vishesha jnanam is there, if I know myself as Brahman, then also that adhyasa of kartrutva, bhoktrutva cannot take place. So same condition applies here, that I know myself as ahamasmi sadabhami, I am and I am conscious. That knowledge is always there. Thank God I don't have to make an effort for that knowledge, because Atma is self-revealing, and therefore it reveals itself as existent and reveals itself as a conscious entity. But Vishesha Jnanam, the particular knowledge that Atma is Brahman or limitless, that I do not know. So Samanyataya, I have the general knowledge of myself that I am and I shine. I do not have the Vishesha Jnanam or the specific knowledge that I am limitless. Therefore, Yadyapi Jivo Nama Vishishtah. Who is Jiva? Vishishtah. So Samsari, Karta, Bhokta. So Kartrutva Vishishtah, Bhoktrutva Vishishtah. One who is qualified by Kartrutva, Bhoktrutva, he is called Jiva. Tadgatam Adhyasatmaka Tul Agnianam Tad Hetukah Bandha. And so that adhyasatmakam, that original ignorance is there, ignorance brings about adhyasa. There is a mula jnanam and tula jnanam. What is moolam and tulam? Tulam means a tree and moolam is a root. So even the tree can be there only when the root is there. A cotton tree can be there only when the root is there. Adhyasa can be there only when ignorance is there. So adhyasa is product of ignorance, just as a tree is a product of the root. Therefore, from this phenomenon of adhyasa, we infer the presence of what we call mula jnanam, or the root cause, ignorance. All our suffering is called tula jnanam, meaning that product ignorance. Adhyasa is a product and ignorance is the cause. So, tadgatam adhyasatmaka tula jnanam tad hetukah bandha, and that adhyasa brings about the bondage. Tadgatah eva, and therefore the bondage also belongs to the jiva. Tathapi saiva jiva shodhitaschet. But when we really inquire into the true nature of this jiva, who is this karta? Who is the bhokta? Ahamayam kuto bhavati chinvadah aipatatyaham nija vicharanam. Where does the ahankara arise from? Ramana Maharshi says. Ahamayam kuto bhavati. Where from this ahankara arise? Looks like it arises from somewhere. It has a source. It seems to have its source elsewhere. Where does it arise from? It is chinvataha. When one makes an inquiry like that, aipatatyaham, this ahankara gets destroyed and reveals itself to what? Paramapurna sat. Ahaminashabhaji aham taya spurti rut swayam paramapurna sat. When ahankara is destroyed, vishishta ahankara is destroyed, samanya ahankara reveals itself as what? Paramapurna sat. So jiva shodhitaschet. Just as when we really inquire, what is the nature of this snake? Then that object reveals itself to be a rope. So also when I inquire, who am I? Who is this jiva? Who is the ahankara? What is its composition? What does it consist of? Then I realize that it consists of two totally contradictory elements which cannot be together. One aspect of ahankara is chaitanyam. Other aspect of ahankara is what? The mortal being. Kartrutva, bhoktrutva, which is jadam. That jada and chetana can never be in one location, can never be together, and still there seems to be an entity called ahankara, which is inexplicable, anirvachaniya. And therefore I realize, hey, this doesn't make sense. This ahankara, aham karta, doesn't make sense. Because aham is what? Aham is pure. Because aham is there in karta also, bhokta also, sukhi also, dukhi also. Same aham follows. If same aham follows, he cannot be either karta or bhokta or sukhi or dukhi. If aham had any form, it cannot assume different forms. When a crystal appears to be yellow now, and red later, and green yet, then I start suspecting. If the crystal consistently appears yellow, then I would not have occasion to even inquire. But now it appears yellow, then it appears orange, then it appears green, then I wonder, wait a minute, what is the true nature of this thing? And so also this aham, now is happy, unhappy, good, bad, right, wrong, father, son. Then I wonder, who is this fellow who seems to appear differently? So jiva shodhitaschet. Well, most people don't bother about it. But somebody will wonder, and Newton will wonder, and Einstein will wonder, why did the apple fall down? Let it fall down, who cares? Yeah, that's a common person. Why did the apple fall down? How come it did not fly up? Things always fall down. What's new about it? But why is it so? What makes it fall down? And that brings about a wondrous, the discovery. And here also, who is this chap? Who is now presenting himself as happy, then unhappy, then right, and then wrong. Certainly I cannot be everything. So aham that follows. What is the nature of that thread? Shodhitaschet pratyak swarupatvena Brahma abhinna iti. Then we find that as far as aham is concerned, Brahma abhinna. As aham is Brahma abhinna, non-different from Brahman. Upon that we superimpose karta, bhokta, shrota, manta, vijnata. So even when an error is committed, there is knowledge of truth. If the general knowledge of truth is not there, error cannot be committed. Even when I take that object to the snake, there is a knowledge of the rope. Idam amsha, or I am amsha. That much knowledge of rope is there. And so also, even when I brand myself as Jiva, there is knowledge of Brahman as aham, aham, aham. So, pratyak swarupatvena Brahma abhinnaha iti tat abhedaha. And therefore, even though Jiva is not Brahman, but that content of Jiva, that pratyak swarupa, that samanya amsha of Jiva is Brahman. Jiva as such is not Brahman, because Jiva is kartrutva vishishtaha, bhoktrutva vishishtaha. So one who is qualified as karta bhokta is not Brahman. But what is the true nature of the one who presents oneself as karta bhokta? The true nature is what? Free from kartrutva, bhoktrutva. And that is Brahma abhinnam. That common thread is not different from Brahman. And therefore, Vishishtatvena Jiva is not Brahman. Samanyatvena Jiva is Brahman. Tadabhedaha iti atah tasmat Vishesha amsham adaya samana vishayakatvam sambhavati. So also from the Jiva, that particular amsha is there. Then both of them can be one. So certainly we don't say that Jiva as he is Brahman. That aspect of Jiva which is non-negatable, which is real, which cannot be abadhyam, that abadhitam swarupam is Brahman. Purvavadi anumanasya satpatipaksha anumanam rachayati. Earlier that fellow said that I cannot be Brahman. Why? I am karta, I am bhokta. Pratyaksha virodha is there. I cannot be Brahman. Why? Because Brahman and Jiva, both of them are possessed of totally contradictory attributes, and so Anumanam is presented. Dahana tuhinavat, like the fire and the ice, being possessed of totally contradictory attributes, cannot be one. So also Viruddha Dharmavatvam is there, and therefore Jiva cannot be Brahman. Sat Pratipakshatvam, we say that there is another explanation also as to why you feel that you are not Brahman. That is being presented now. Purvavadi anumanasya sat pratipaksha anumanam rachayati, says Ratnaprabha. Jivaha brahma abhinnaha tad jnana nivartya adhyasa ashrayatvat yaditham tat tasa yasa shukti abhinnaha idam amshaha iti. Jivaha brahma abhinnaha. Jiva is non-different from Brahman. That's what they say. Jiva, when you say is Brahman, Brahma abhinnaha. So Jiva is Brahma abhinnaha. Jiva is non-different from Brahman, non-separate from Brahman. Why? Tadjnana nivartya adhyasa ashrayatvad. What is tadjnana? Brahma jnana nivartya adhyasa ashrayatvad. Because Jiva is the ashraya of the adhyasa, which can be eliminated by Brahma jnanam. Yadittam tattasa. Anything that becomes the ashraya of adhyasa, which can be eliminated by knowledge of something, that must be identical to that thing. Like the snake, for example, is what? The product of adhyasa. If the snake can be eliminated by the knowledge of rope, the snake must be non-different from the rope. That's the idea. So also if Jivagata Adhyasa can be eliminated by knowledge of Brahman, then Jiva must be identical to Brahman. So similarly also, if all the snake can be eliminated by the knowledge of rope, snake must be non-different from rope. Yaditham tattatha. Vishishte Brahma abhedasya asambhavad antahkaranatiriktaha jivaha pakshaha ityartaha. Prabala shruti mulakatvad idamanumanam prabalamidi bhavaha. Okay, doesn't bother to explain further. Adhyas ashrayatvad adhyasanistha adhyas adhishthanaatvad ityartaha. In fact, Brahman, Jiva also, or Brahma is not adhyasa ashrayam, adhyasa adhishthanam. Ashraya is the one who is affected by ashrita. Adhishthanam is that which is not affected by the superimposition. So ashraya and adhisthana are different. Ashraya means that, for example, the flower has the ashraya of flowerness. If flower is fragrance, then fragrance has its ashraya in flower. Then fragrance is connected to flower, associated with it. When we say that rope is the ashraya of snake, it's not that snake is connected to rope. So we say rope is adhishthanam. That's the difference there. Itham yad jnana nivarta adhyasa ashraya ityartha tasa tad abhinnam ityartha. The idea is, so yad ajnana nivarti adhyasa, that which is an ashraya of the adhyasa, which can be eliminated by a knowledge of what, should be identical to that. Meaning, if jivagata adhyasa can be eliminated by the knowledge of Brahman, then jiva must be identical to Brahman. Yaditham tattatha yatha shukti abhinna idam amshaha. That idam amshaha. So jiva also, aham is samanya amsha. That samanya amsha must be identical to Brahman. Because that aham becomes what? Adhyasa ashraya. Upon that aham, kartrutva, bhoktrutva, all of these are superimposed. So aham is a samanya amsha. Upon that there is a superimposition of kartrutva, bhoktrutva. And that kartrutva, bhoktrutva can be eliminated by knowledge of Brahman. In that case, that aham must be Brahma alone. Similarly also, we say here, so iyam, what is it? Idam, so idam rajatam, we say. But iyam shuktika, whatever it is. So this is the silver. In that this part belongs to mother of pearl, belongs to the shell. In fact, on a beach, there is a shell. Due to the play of the sunlight, that shell appears to be silver. And then one mistakes that to be silver and says, this is silver. When you say, this is silver, in that I point out that object. This means I point out that object. This is silver. What is actually being pointed out? The shell is being pointed out. And therefore this is what? Shell. And silver is what? Adhyasa. Then when will the adhyasa or the error of the silver go away? When the shell is known. If by the knowledge of shell the adhyasa of silver can be eliminated, then it means that this must be identical to shell. Upon the this or samanya amsha, the superimposition of silver is made. If that superimposition can go away by the knowledge of shell, then this must be identical to shell. And so I say, aham samsari. Upon aham, there is superimposition of samsari. That superimposition of adhyasa goes away by knowledge of Brahman. That shows that aham, the samanya amsha, must be Brahman. So samsari is vishesha amsha, aham is samanya amsha. That vishesha adhyasa goes away by knowledge of Brahman, and therefore aham must be identical to Brahman. Because ayam sarpaha, when you say ayam, that ayam belongs to what? The rope. And a snake goes away by knowledge of rope. Therefore we say that ayam is rope. And similarly also, by knowledge of Brahman, the jivagata adhyasa goes away. Therefore we say aham is Brahman. It's anumanam. So even your experience reveals that you are Brahman. He says, my experience reveals that I am not Brahman. We say it reveals that you are Brahman. It's a way of looking at it. He is looking at Vishesha Amsa, we are looking at Samanya Amsa. That's the only difference. He looks at the name and form, and we look at the content of the name and form. That's the only difference. He says, this bangle is not the earring. We say bangle is earring also. How? From the standpoint of gold, the bangle is also earring. From the standpoint of name and form, bangle is not earring. Looking at the name and form, which is adhyasa, you find all kinds of dualities. Look at the locus, the very adhishtanam, then you find that there is no duality. And so also, in my experience, if my attention is to the sukhi, dukhi, samsari, certainly he is not Brahman. But then aham sukhi, aham dukhi, aham samsari, that aham is a common thread. And that is Brahman. So look there. Where does sukhi arise? From aham. So, sfurati hrudsvayam paramapurna sat aham ahaminashabhari aham taya. When that vishishtaham goes away, samanyaham shines as paramapurna sat. So that samanyaham is identical to Brahman, not vishishtaham. People commit the error of taking the vishishta as jiva. I am Brahman as Brahman. I am Brahman, people declare. Which I? The one who takes himself to be a jiva, a limited entity, and declares himself to be Brahman. Hum the Brahma hai. And somebody strikes with danda, don't hit me. So I am not hitting you. Brahman cannot be hit. But if he says I am hit, that means that you take yourself to be body. The point is not that the body is Brahman, or the one identified with body also is not Brahman, but that upon which that identification takes place, that which is the basis of that identification, that Aham is Brahma, and that's the idea here. There's a verse here, Satyajnana Sukhatma Kenayam Shokasagare Magna iti aloche yatindra pragadhyasam pradarshayamasa. Satyajnana Sukhatma, the Atma is Satyam Jnanam Anantam, this Atma. Kenayam Shokasagare Magna. How can this Satyajnana Ananta Atma, he is drowning or he is submerged in the ocean of grief? Why? What for? Kena. Because of what reason? Iti alochya. Doing this alochana, Yatindra, the most exalted among the Yatis, in this case Sutrakara, Pragadhyasam Pradarshayamasa. Bhashyakara could find Adhyasa only when Sutrakara suggests it. So the brilliance of a Sutrakara who saw that Adhyasa. We say brilliance of Bhashyakara because without Bhashyakara we could never have known this. But Pragadhyasam Pradarshayamasa. And therefore that Yatindra showed that it is Adhyasa because of which this Sukh, what is it? Satyajnana Sukhatma is Shokasagare Nimagna. This Atma is, this Satchidananda Atma is submerged in the ocean of grief because, not there is any reason, because of Adhyasa. So Adhyasam, Prag Adhyasam, that's the first thing that is shown here is Adhyasam. Why did Bhashyakara write Adhyasa Bhashya first? Because just to make sure that this illegitimate problem, don't worry, first of all you must release them from fear. So Ashocyan Anvashotastvam, don't worry, there is no reason for grief at all. Dadyadabhitim Sahasa Mahatma. As Vivekishwaramani says, when anybody approaches you with all kinds of problems, then Mahatma, Dadyadabhitim, first of all gives him, so releases him from fear, gives him immunity from fear. Don't worry, there is no cause for suffering at all. And that is why, in order to release the student moksha from the fear, Adhyasa is the first thing. So Prag Adhyasam Pradarshayamasa. So Shankaracharya first of all discussed Adhyasa, that the problem is illegitimate, and then proceeds further. Then alone knowledge will solve that problem. So Yatha Shukti Abhinna Idam Amshaha. Okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmedi Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Omkarasya Shabdasya Dvavetau Brahmanah Pura Kancham Vidva Vidiryatau Tasman Mangalikavubhau. Om Atha Om Atha Om Atha. The Purva Paksha here was that Vedanta Shastra should not be, the one should not undertake the study of Vedanta Shastra because it doesn't have either Vishaya or Prayojanam. You claim that the Vishaya or the theme of Vedanta Shastra is Jiva Brahma Aikya, identity between Jiva and Brahma, but that just contradicts our practical experience, that we know, we feel directly that Brahman is different from me, and also there is this inference, since Jiva and Brahma, both of them are possessed of altogether contradictory characteristics, they cannot be one because whichever things are possessed of contradictory characteristics cannot be one. Like the fire and ice. Therefore, Vedanta Shastra does not have prayojanam and doesn't have Vishaya. And it doesn't have prayojanam also. You say that the study of the scriptures or the knowledge which is imparted by the scriptures leads us to moksha or liberation. But how can how can knowledge eliminate a bondage which is real? The bandha is real, and a real thing cannot be eliminated by knowledge. And therefore, satya bandha, when bandha is satya, then there is no way that knowledge can eliminate that. And therefore, even that moksha which is prayojanam also cannot be established. And so there is samshaya here. Now this Purva Paksha, that Vishaya and Prayojana are absent, therefore this Shastra should not be studied. And that is how the Sutrakara said that Athato Brahma Jignasa. And how the Vishaya and Prayojana are established by the Vedantin is that there is a phenomenon called Adhyasa. There is an error being committed in our life which arises from ignorance. And ignorance does create a sense of reality where in fact there is nothing at all. The snake which is non-existent can be taken to be a real snake, and it creates in me the same kind of fear, etc., which a real snake would create. And therefore, says Shastram Arabdhavyam Vishay Prayojanatvat Bhojanadivat. Shastram Prayojanavat Bandha Nivartaka Jnana Hetutvat Rajjuhuyam Ityadi Vakyavat. The Shastra is Prayojanam. What is the Prayojanam? Moksha is the Prayojanam. How is that Prayojanam of the purpose served? Because bondage is unreal. Bondage is just a notion. Yes, just as Sarpaha. So just as Sarpa is a notion. And Rajjuhuyam, this is a Rajju or this is a rope. That knowledge, just as it eliminates or destroys the Sarpa, so also that I am Brahma, that knowledge eliminates the sense of bondage. Bandha jnana nivartiha adhyastatvat rajju sarvavaditi. The bondage is something that can be eliminated by knowledge. Adhyastatvat, because bondage is adhyasta. It is mithya. It is superimposed. It's a notion or an error or a brahma. So adhyasa, adhyaropa, brahma, all of these things mean the same thing. It's an error. An error is something that is born of knowledge, ignorance, and ignorance is that which can be destroyed by knowledge. So Rajju Sarvavat, just as Iyam Rajjuhu, this knowledge eliminates that Sarpa, and so also this bondage, which is a product of ignorance, can be eliminated by the knowledge. Evam Arthat Brahmajnana Jivagad Anartha Brahmanivrittim Phalam Sutrayan. Thus Sutrakara says that Brahmajnanat Jivagada Anartha Brahmanivritti. What is Jivagada Anartha? All the Anartha meaning all the evils associated with Jiva. Pramatritva, Kartrutva, Bhoktrutva. That I am a Karta, I am a Bhokta, I am a Samsari, Sukhi Dukhi. This and the effects of these are what we call Anartha. All the evils and sufferings in our life. But that is only Brahma. That Anartha which is of the nature of Brahma, Nivrittim, that can be eliminated by Brahmajnanat, by knowledge of Brahman. That's what Sutrakara says by saying Asato Brahma Jignasa. We say that the knowledge eliminates bondage. Which knowledge? Brahma Jignasa. So Brahma Jnanam. It is knowledge of Brahman that will eliminate the bondage. And that bondage which is of the nature of all kinds of anartha or sufferings. And so that phalam is sutrayan. Sutrakara also suggests that the phala is moksha of the nature of elimination of all the suffering of the jiva by Brahmajnana. And that way, jiva brahmanoho aikyam vishayam api arthat suchayati. Sutrakara himself suggests or indicates that the vishaya is jiva brahmaikya. Because if by the knowledge of Brahman, all the difficulties of jiva can be solved, if by the knowledge of Brahman the jiva can be liberated, certainly that jiva and Brahma has to be one, because anya jnanat anyatra brahma anivrittehe. The brahma or the error pertaining to jiva can be eliminated by knowledge of Brahman. That can only happen if jiva and Brahman are one. So it is jivo brahma abhinnaha tad jnana nivarte adhyasa ashrayatvat yad ittham tat tatha yatha shukti abhinnaha idam amshaha iti. Jivo Brahma Abhinnaha. We say that Jiva is non-different from Brahman. same as Brahman, one with Brahman, identical to Brahman. Tadjnanivati adhyasa ashrayatvat. Jiva is the ashraya of adhyasa, which can be destroyed or eliminated by knowledge of Brahman. So Jiva is the ashraya, the basis or the locus of adhyasa or superimposition, which superimposition can be destroyed by knowledge of Brahman. So it is yadittam tattatha. Yatyad jnana nivartya adhyasa ashraya tattat abhinnami samanya vyaptihi. So he says, let us take the illustration. Yatha shukti abhinnaha idam amshaha. Now when we commit the error of taking a shell to be silver, as we said, there is a knowledge of what we call idam amshaha. That this is a silver. This is silver when we say that this part belongs to the shell. Which means that the samanya jnanam of a shell do we have. If the shell, as we said, were totally unknown, there would have been no occasion of committing the error. If the shell were totally known, properly known, then also there would have been no occasion to commit the error. Error is committed when shell is known samanyataya, it is known, there is something here. But vishishtadaya, unknown, that this is shell, in that manner it is not known. So idam amsha of the shell, this aspect of the shell which is known, becomes the adhishthanam for the superimposition of snake. So we say, this is a snake. This is silver. So what is silver? Silver is the superimposition. And this is that which belongs to the shell. So this or idam amsha becomes the ashraya or adhishthanam for the superimposition of the rope, of the silver. And thus, even there is knowledge, partial knowledge of the shell is there. So therefore, if by the knowledge of Shuktika, if the Brahma pertaining to idam, so there is Brahma pertaining to idam, that idam is taken to be rajatam, this is taken to be silver. So Brahma or error is pertaining to this. So if by the knowledge of Shuktika or shell, the Brahma or the error pertaining to this goes away, then this and Shuktika must be one. Because this is silver, then this becomes the ashraya or locus of the error of silver. And that error of Brahma goes away by the knowledge of Shuktika, that this is Shuktika. So by the knowledge of Shuktika, the error pertaining to this goes away. Therefore we say that this or idam and Shuktika are one. Similarly also there is a notion on my part that I am a samsari. That I am is what we call the locus, upon which the samsari is superimposed. So this is called jivagata Brahma. Brahma pertaining to jiva meaning I. So I am a samsari, I am sukhi, I am dukhi. That I am becomes a locus for all kinds of superimpositions. And these superimpositions go away by knowledge of Brahman. Therefore we say that I am and Brahman must be one. Just as this becomes a locus for superimposition of silver, and that superimposition goes away by knowing that object as shell, therefore this and shell are identical, so also I am becomes a locus for all kinds of superimpositions of samsara, and that superimposition goes away by knowing the gaining knowledge of Brahman. Therefore I am and Brahman must be identical. So Sutrakara suggests an identity, indicates an identity also between Jiva and Brahman. So Athato Brahma Jignasa, by that sutra, Sutrakara indicates that by the knowledge of Brahman, moksha can be gained, which means that bondage is that which can be destroyed by knowledge of Brahman, which means that which can be destroyed by knowledge must be only adhyastam, and so bondage is adhyasta, that is suggested by Sutra, indicated by Sutrakara. And by saying that the Brahma or the samsara nivritti takes place pertaining to Jiva, also there is an indication that Jiva is identical to Brahma. Jiva means what? The samanya amsha of Jiva, not the vishishta. We don't say that the one who is samsari is Brahman, but in the samsari there is a thread. I am. It is that thread that connects every experience. And that thread connects all the three states of awareness also. Waking, dream and deep sleep. And so it is I am which is the locus for all these superimpositions, and that is identical to Brahman. That identity between Jiva and Brahman also is indicated by a Sutrakara in this simple sutra, Athato Brahma Jignasa. How many things this indicates? That Jignasa must be replaced by Vichara. Jnanam must be understood to be Avagati Paryandam Jnanam, knowledge until the bondage is removed. And that Vicharaha Kartavya, that there must be a Kartavyata involved here, that something is to be done. And what should be done? Since Jignasa has arisen, therefore Vichara must be performed or carried out in order to satisfy that Jignasa. So that Kartavyatvam also is suggested or indicated, Adhyastatvam also is indicated, and Jiva Brahma Aikya also is indicated. And therefore, that Vidhi, what we should do is indicated, Vishaya, Prayojana, both are indicated by the Sutra. Because Bhashyakara also cannot bring in something which is not in the Sutra. Bhashya is that which must be faithful to Sutra. And therefore you cannot add your own. If you are writing a Karika, then you can do that. The Karika has the freedom to bring in the ideas as well as to reject the ideas also. But Bhashya does not have that freedom. Bhashya is true to the Sutra alone. So unless these ideas were contained in the Sutra, Bhashyakara could not have brought them out. The fact that Bhashyakara started with introduction of Adhyasa shows that Bhashyakara saw that idea of Adhyasa in the Sutra itself, and this is what the Tikakara has shown there. Yaditham tat tatha yatha shukti abhinna idam amsha shukti abhinna iti. Iti vishaya siddhi hetuhu adhyasah iti evam vishaya prayojanavatvat shastram arambhaniyam iti Ratnaprabha says. It is shown that Vishaya Siddhi Hetu, Adhyasa becomes a Hetu for Siddhi of Vishaya and Prayojana both. Otherwise, if Adhyasa were not there, Vishaya could not be established, Jiva Brahma Aikya cannot be seen, nor Prayojana Moksha would be possible. So, Adhyasa becomes a Hetu for establishing of Vishaya and Prayojanam. So, it is Vishaya Prayojanavatvat, and thus Adhyasa, concept, endows or provides the Shastra with Vishaya and Prayojanam. So we say that Shastram Vishaya Prayojanavat. Shastra is that which is possessed of Vishaya and Prayojanam. And therefore Arambhaniyam. Anything that is Prayojanam and Vishaya must definitely be taken seriously. So Shastram Arambhaniyam, it must be studied. Otherwise there would be no need for Sutra. Sutrakara must justify why Sutra must be studied. And that's how we first justify that, by creating that background of the nature of Upodghata or preface. So, the Tikakara, Ratnaprabha, summarizes the Purva Paksha and Siddhanta. This is Atra Purva Paksha. Because why should Purva Paksha be there? Purva Paksha also must have some reason for. See, it's not that people just raise objections for the sake of raising. Then that would be only Vitanda or Jalpa. But here we are talking about Vada. That Purva Pakshi is also one who is interested in learning. Or he is presenting a Paksha because he has a purpose behind it. So what was the purpose why Purva Paksha said that Shastram na Arambhaniyam, that Vedanta should not be studied? Did he have something in mind? Yes. Atra Purva Pakshe bandhasya satyatvena. Purva Pakshi says bondage is real. Jnanat anivrittehe. And a real bondage cannot be eliminated merely by knowledge. Upayantar sadhya mukti. Therefore mukti is upayantar sadhya. Mukti or moksha is that which can be accomplished only by an upaya or a means other than just Brahmajnana. Your Brahmajnanam cannot bring about moksha because bondage is real, and therefore mukti upayantar sadhya. केवल कर्मणो वा ज्ञान कर्म समुच्चयाद्वा षोडश पदार्थ ज्ञानाद्वा साध्या मुक्ति इति भावः. Idea is either by karma or by samuchya of jnana karma or by so many other methods are there, Sankhya, etc. Those who presented so many variety of theories. By one of those the moksha should be attained and not by Brahmajnanam. This is what Purva Pakshi had in mind when he presented his Purva Paksha. And this is what Siddhanta understood. And so, mukti upayantara sadhya iti phalam siddhante jnanadeva mukti iti vivekah. What is Vedanta Siddhanta? Jnanadeva mukti. By knowledge alone and merely by knowledge, mukti. You don't require any samuchaya. You do not require the support of karma or upasana for knowledge to be able to give mukti. Meaning knowledge is capable of giving mukti on its own, without having to derive the strength from karma or upasana, or without having to depend upon them. Knowledge itself gives rise to mukti. So jnanadeva mukti iti vivekah. Iti sarvam manasi nidhaya ब्रह्म सूत्राणि व्याख्यातु कामो भगवान भाष्यकारः सूत्रेण विचार कर्तव्यता रूप श्रौतार्थ अन्यथा अनुपपत्या अर्थात सूत्रित विषय प्रयोजनवत्वम उपोद्घातत्वात् तत्सिद्ध हेतु अध्यास आक्षेप समाधान भाष्याभ्याम प्रथमं वर्णयति युष्मदस्मत् प्रत्यय गोचरयोः इति. So iti sarvam manasi nidhaya, all of this that we discussed so far in so many days, all of this manasi nidhaya, keeping in mind, we could just see through and through. It may take us 1 week of discussion, and it may take years and years of investigation on our part, perhaps. It took only a week of discussion because material is ready-made, and teachers have already taught us everything. Otherwise, even this material we cannot understand because we have been taught. So, but then, all of this was, of course, we imagine that Bhashyakar also is taught by his teacher. We don't say that this is something his own creation. But then, his presentation, it is sarvam manasin. All of this keeping in mind that first thing is a sutra has a prayojanam. What is the prayojanam? To ascertain the meaning of Vedanta Vakya. Otherwise, Vedanta Vakya themselves may not create the conviction because sometimes they are contradictory or sometimes they are not clear. Sometimes we may not be knowing clear whether it's Arthavada or what it is. Swasya Tatparyam or Parartha. All of that is ascertained by, there are many Vedanta Vakyas where Parartha Tatparyam, that also Sutra determines. All Srushti Vakyas do not have Tatparya in themselves, they all Tatparya in Brahman. That also this Vedanta Vakya, Vedanta Sutras will tell us. And so, that Sutra serves the prayojanam of ascertaining the meaning of the Vedanta Vakyas by Nyaya. That's the purpose of Sutra. That is first established. And then establishes what is the relationship of this sutra with the whole grantha and everything, and then establishes how this sutra has ekavakyata or it has a concurrence with this particular statement of the Upanishad, Atmavara Shrotavya. Having established that, how this sutra forms an adhikaranam, because it has all the elements, all the 5 elements. That is the Vishaya. What is the Vishaya? The whole Vedanta Shastra, which is indicated by the word, by the mantra Shrotavya. And what is the samshaya? That doubt is there. Whether Vedanta Shastra has Vishaya Prayojana or not. What's the Purva Paksha? There is no Vishaya Prayojanam. Siddhanta, there are Vishaya Prayojanam. So this is how, all of this keeping in mind. And what establishes Vishaya Prayojana? Adhyasa. That bandha jnana nivartya, adhyastatvat. Since bondage is only adhyasa, therefore it can be eliminated by knowledge. And therefore, moksha also is jnana nivartya, bandha jnana nivartya. And that is how Vishaya is Jiva Brahmano Aikyam. That's the Vishaya. Because by the knowledge of Brahman, the Brahma of the Jiva goes away. So Jiva and Brahma are one. So keeping all of this in mind, it is sarvam manasi nidhaya. So when you write your introduction, you must have the whole text in mind, understand? Introduction is the last thing that is written very often. It's not the first thing written. Although you start in your mind, when you write it, you write the introduction at the end to make sure that it covers in a subtle manner everything that is contained in the book. Directly or indirectly, either through suggestion or through specific mention. So, iti sarvam manasi nidhaya, keeping all of this in mind, Brahma Sutrani Vyakhya Dukamo Bhagavan Bhashyakaraha. So, Bhagavan Bhashyakaraha. They never say Shankara or even Shankaracharya. This kind of words we never use. Always says Bhagavan. If you go to traditional Mahatma and even say Shankaracharya, they will get upset. Say Bhagavan Bhashyakaraha. We were educated ourselves in the past, because of the samskara of Chinmaya, Shankara, etc., So we use this kind of, without necessarily meaning to dishonor them, but still, don't say this Shankar. Is Bhagavan Bhashyakara. The feelings get hurt when you use this kind of, Krishna, Brahma, this kind of things. Say Lord Krishna, Allah. Say use them, properly mention them. Says Vyakhyadukamaha Bhagavan Bhashyakara. So Bhagavan Bhashyakara. Bhagavan, because he is an Amsha of Bhagavan. At least, so Vairagya is there, Moksha is there, Jnanam is there, Yasha is there, Kirti is there. All the Amsha that Bhagavan has, he has them. And therefore, Bhagavan Bhashyakara. They don't even say he, because you must always use plural. Generally speaking, Bhagavan, since it is otherwise, Bhashyakara he, they always say. So Vyakhyatam. So Bhashyakaras have said it. But that plural is again, it doesn't fit in English, therefore we have to anyhow use it. But in Sanskrit, they will generally use plural in honor. Sutrena. So by the sutra, Vichara Kartavyada Rupa Shrautartha Anyatha Anupatya. Atha means sadhana chatushtaya sampatti anantaram. Ataha, since jignasa arises, Brahma jignasa, since it arises, therefore Brahma vicharaha kartavya. This is what the sutra means. So we would expect Bhashyakara to right away start discussing the meaning of the word atha. What does atha mean? What ataha means? What Brahma jignasa means? So instead of directly starting the discussion of that which the sutra imparts, Prathama pratipannam pratipadyam shrautartham ullanghya. When you listen to any statement, immediately that comes to your mind is what is meant by the statement, and not what is indicated by the statement. Charama pratipannam arthikartham. Arthika is what? Indicated meaning, or meaning that follows as a matter of course. So that is what adhyasa. And the idea is, adhyasa is not something that is directly mentioned by the sutra. Adhyasa is something that is only indicated by the sutra, and what is directly mentioned by the sutra is Anubandha Chatushtayam. Adhikari Vishaya Prayojana, all of this is what is directly mentioned by the sutra. So instead of directly discussing Anubandha Chatushtaya, how come Bhashyakara discusses Adhyasa, which is only indirectly mentioned, suggested? So procedure is, you treat the direct meaning first, and then the corollaries, etc. Here on the other hand, the corollary is first discussed. What is corollary? That is adhyasa. Prasamam kimidi varnayati ityaha. How come Bhashyakara starts with what we call adhyasa, discussion on adhyasa, before commencing the discussion on the sutra? Says sutrena vichara kartavyata rupa shrautartha anyatha anupatya. That is the Ratnaprabha. Then the Purnanandiya explains, sutrena Lakshitaya vichara kartavyada. Vichara kartavyada lakshita. By lakshana vritti, we said, sutra mentions Brahma jignasa, but it implies Brahma vichara. So sutra lakshita Brahma vichara kartavyada, Brahma vichara kartavya. So sutra in fact implies a kartavyada, that one must conduct the Brahma vichara. So sutrena lakshitaya vichara kartavyada tadrupa shrautarthasya. Now that shrautartha, this artha, which is implied meaning by the sutra, that one must conduct this inquiry, anyatha anupatya. What is anyatha anupattir nama? Vina vishaya prayojane kartavyada na sambhavati. Any kartavyada, whenever somebody asks you to do something, so sutra directly asks us to perform that vichara, and that we cannot undertake any task unless we know the prayojanam, what is to be accomplished by performance of the task, and what is the nature of the task to be performed, Vishaya. So unless Vishaya and Prayojana are established, Kartavyada cannot be established. So Sutra directly talks about Kartavyada, the Vichara Kartavya, and if we directly start discussing Kartavyada before establishing Vishaya Prayojana, that Kartavyada would not make sense, and therefore, so Kartavyada na sambhavati, unless Vishaya and Prayojana established, Kartavyada cannot be established. Iti akarika anyasa anupatya. So arthapatti is there. Anupatya arthat sutrita vishaya prayojanavattvam upodghatatvat. अर्थात सूत्रितत्वम नाम आर्थिकार्थया सूत्रेण प्रतिपादितत्वम. That sutra indicates this meaning. These meanings are indicated by the sutra. विषयश्च प्रयोजनं च तेयस्य स्तः इति विषयो प्रयोजनवत् शास्त्रम. Shastra is that which possesses Vishaya and Prayojana. And so Vishaya Prayojana Dvayam. Idea is that Sutrita Vishaya Prayojana Vatvam. Shastra possesses both Vishaya and Prayojana. That is what is indicated by Sutra. By Kartavyata. So Sutra says Vicharaha Kartavyaha. Since Sutra says Vicharaha Kartavyaha, therefore Bhashyakara says, hey, Vishaya Prayojan must be there, otherwise Sutrakara will not say that Vicharaha Kartavyaha. But the Vishaya Prayojana are not directly mentioned, they are indicated. How they are indicated? Because Kartavyata is there, so Prayojanam must be there. What is the Prayojanam? Brahma Vicharaha. So Brahma Jnanam is a means. And what can Brahma Jnanam do? It can only eliminate ignorance. If elimination of ignorance means moksha, that means bondage must be product of ignorance. And therefore, bondage is what? Adhyasta. So all of this is ultimately suggested by Sutrakara. So, Sutrita Vishaya Prayojanavatvam, by the very word Kartavyata, which also is not mentioned. But then, since that Jignasa is there, and Jignasa means desire to know, and desire to know cannot be fulfilled unless knowledge takes place, and knowledge cannot take place unless Vichara is performed. Therefore, Vichara must be performed because Jignasa is there, and since Kartavyata is there, Vishaya Prayojanam must be there. So Sutrakara suggests, that makes Bhashyakara investigate, what is this Vishaya Prayojanam? So Sutrita Vishaya Prayojanavatvam, Sutrakara already has indicated that the Vishaya and the Prayojana are there because Kartavyata is mentioned there. So Upodghatatvat Sutritam cha tad Vishaya Prayojanavatvam cha tasya Upodghatatvat. Upodghata Vishatvena Upodghatatvad ityartha. That there is an Upodghata. This sutra is of the nature of Upodghata. What is Upodghata? Atra Vivaranacharyaha Pratipadyamartham Buddho Sangrahya Prageva Tadartham Arthanta Varnanam Upodghata Sangati iti Upodghata Lakshanam Vadanti. That is Vivaranacharyaha. So upon this Brahma Sutra Bhashya, there is what we call Panchapadika. Acharya's direct disciple Padmapada Acharya wrote a commentary upon the Chathsutri called Panchapadika. Upon that an Acharya wrote what we call Vivaranam. And so that Vivarana is a very important text. Sutra is important, Bhashya is important, and Panchapadika is important. But most important has become Vivarana because it gives us real an insight into what all these people have to say. And so this whole thing is called Vivarana Prasthanam. Not Padma Panchapadika Prasthanam, but Vivarana Prasthanam. Therefore, what Vivaranacharya says there is important for all these people and for us, of course. Therefore, says, Atra, in this particular context, we read everything else, but then these people are totally committed to that. So, Vivaranacharya, what does Vivaranacharya say? How does he define Upodghata or preface? We must know what is preface. Says, Pratipadyamartham Buddho Sangruhya. What is it that the text has to actually, what is Pratipadyamartham? What is it the text has to convey? Or what is it the text is teaching? Let's call it Pratipadyartha. Buddho Sangruhya. Keeping that whole artha which is taught by the scripture or by the text, keeping that in mind in the buddhi. Prageva tadartham arthantara varnanam. Tadartha means for the sake of establishing Pratipadya. Arthantara varnanam, arthantara chinta. So chintanam or the thinking that is performed in order to establish that Pratipadyartha is called Upodghata. So arthantara chinta. Artha is what? Pratipadyartha. Jiva Brahma Aikya. Vishaya and Prayojanam. Prayojanam is moksha. That is artha. But in order to arrive at this artha, Pratipadyartha, arthantara chintanam, like in this case, adhyasa chintanam. So not directly Vishaya Prayojana chintanam, but adhyasa chintanam. In order to arrive at the Vishaya Prayojanam, this kind of arthantara chintanam is called Upodghata. This is called Upodghata Sangatihi. So there is Sangati. The Bhashyakara, which sutra has Sangati, Upodgha, Adhyasa Bhashya. What Sangati or connection it has with Brahma Sutra? Upodghata Sangati. So everything that is in a text must have Sangati. Preface also must have Sangati with the text. Forward must have Sangati with the text. Index must have Sangati with the text. Even the so-called, what do they call it? The printing, the details, who has printed, that must have all Sangati there. Somewhere, in some manner or other, everything must be related. Nothing irrelevant must be there. So Adhyasa Bhashya enjoys what we call Upodghata Sangati with sutras or with Brahma Sutra. तथा च विषय प्रयोजन द्वयस्य प्रतिपाद्य विचार कर्तव्यता सिद्ध्यर्थ चिंता विषयत्वात् उपोद्घातत्वम् उपचर्यते इति भावः. तथा च in this particular case विषय प्रयोजन द्वयस्य प्रतिपाद्य विचार कर्तव्यता सिद्ध्यर्थ, since vichara kartavyata cannot be unless Vishaya Prayojana is established, therefore establishment of Vishaya Prayojana becomes the Upodghata. A discussion of Vishaya Prayojana is there because then alone the vichara kartavyata is possible, and therefore a chintanam or a deliberation upon Vishaya Prayojana becomes the Upodghata. So Upodghatatvam upacharyate. तस्य उपोद्घात संगत्या अवश्यम निरूपणीयस्य विषय प्रयोजन द्वयस्य सिद्धि तत्सिद्धि. तत्सिद्धि मीन्स व्हाट? विषय प्रयोजन द्वयस्य सिद्धि. तत्सिद्धि हेतु विषय प्रयोजन द्वय सिद्धि हेतु अध्यास. So अध्यास establishes विषय प्रयोजन establishes कर्तव्यता, and कर्तव्यता establishes Brahma Sutra. So Brahma Sutra study. Why should we study second sutra? जन्माद्यस्य यतः. Why? Because विचारः कर्तव्य है. Why should विचारः कर्तव्य किम? Because विषय प्रयोजनवत्वात्. Because there is both विषय and प्रयोजन. How विषय प्रयोजन that? Because there is अध्यास. So discussion of अध्यास to establish विषय प्रयोजन, to establish विचार कर्तव्यता, to study the scriptures from the second sutra on. Okay, this is the krama. So Ratna Tat Siddhi Hetu, Vishaya Prayojana Siddhi Hetu, Adhyasa. That Adhyasa, which is a Hetu for establishing Vishaya and Prayojana. That Adhyasa, Akshepa Samadhana Bhashyabhyam. There also there is an Akshepa. How is Adhyasa possible? Somebody says. So it's interestingly enough, Brahma Sutra Bhashya starts with an Akshepa. Akshepa means what? With a denial or a negation. Somebody says Adhyasa is not possible. Then Samadhana, Adhyasa is possible. Akshepa, Samadhana, Bhyam. Doesn't even make pratigna that there is Adhyasa. Directly denies. How can Adhyasa be there? Doesn't make sense. So Anirvachaniyatvam is the word one. From the beginning, the Anirvachaniyatvam, that things don't make sense. Life does not make sense to an intelligent person. Nothing makes sense. You cannot define anything. You cannot define sukham, dukkham, nothing you can define. Things don't make sense. How come they don't make sense? If things doesn't make sense, it cannot be real. A real thing must make sense. If it doesn't make sense, it is mithya. If it makes sense, it is real. Doesn't make sense, it is false. Like magic does not make sense. How come this fellow produced an apple where there was nothing? How come he has produced 100 rupee bill where there was a piece of newspaper? Doesn't make sense. So it must be false. It cannot be real. You understand? Why we arrive at falsehood? We know this. We do it ourselves. Last night I got the lottery. I won this, 1 million rupees. Next morning I don't have a single penny. So those 1 million rupees are false. Because it doesn't make sense. If I have 1 million rupees, how come I am still on the footpath? Doesn't make sense. So those 1 million rupees are false. How do we in our own life arrive at the conclusion that something is false when it does not make sense? Life does not make sense, so it is false. Do you have the strength to say that? That's what they say. What do you mean by false? How can false, but how come it appears real? That can happen. That is called adhyasa. That which is not there but still appears to be real is called mithya. And that is brought about by what we call maya. Maya brings about what we call mithya, which is not there but appears to be there. Yadasad bhasamanam tan mithya swapna gajadivat. Just as in the dream, you see this elephant, etc., which are this impossible, which are not there, and still you experience them, still you perceive them. Therefore, they are called mithya. We don't say it is non-existent because you experience it. But we don't say it is real because you cannot explain it. Since you cannot explain it, it is not real. Since you experience it, you cannot say it is non-existent. So there is some in-between category, which is what we call mithya, which experienced all that but cannot be explained. That's called mithya. So life is not explicable. Therefore, Bhashyakara says that. Somebody says to Bhashyakara, how is adhyasa possible? Doesn't make sense. He says, yes, it doesn't make sense, but still it is there, which shows life does not make sense, which means there is something wrong, fundamentally wrong somewhere. What is fundamentally wrong? That I am a jiva, I am a samsari, fundamentally wrong. That there is unhappiness, suffering, fundamentally wrong. There is shoka, grief, fundamentally wrong. Ashochan, anvashochastvam. That's all adhyasa is mentioned right there in the first sentence. And so Bhashyakara begins discussion with adhyasa. There adhyasa itself is questioned and then says, well, it is questionable, but still we experience it. Aksheba samadhana bhashyabhyam. There is an aksheba bhashyam and samadhana bhashyam. Prathamam varnayati adhyasam. So Bhashyakara, Bhagavan Bhashyakara, adhyasam prathamam varnayati. So Bhashyakara first discusses adhyasa to establish Vishaya Prayojanam, to establish Kartavyada, to establish Arambha, and then to establish the further study. What is Bhashyam? Says Bhashyamidi Sutrartho Varanyate Yatra Vakye Sutranukarvihi Swapadani cha Varanyante Bhashyam Bhashyavido Viduhu. Everything has a definition. Bhashyavidaha Viduhu. The knowers of Bhashya say this is called Bhashya. What is Bhashya? Sutrartho Varanyate Yatra. That exposition where Sutrartha Varanyate, that exposition which expounds the meaning of sutra. So Bhashya always pertains to sutra, understand? Bhashya always pertains to sutra. Vakyehi sutranukarvihi. By the vakyas, so by the statements or sentences which are in keeping with the purport or tatparya of the sutra, where the sutra is expounded, that kind of an exposition explaining the purport of the sutra is called Bhashya. Swapadani cha varanyante. Not only that, but Swapadani. When the Bhashyakara feels that explanation of sutra requires introduction of certain concepts, some principles, then you must introduce like adhyasa is a concept which we don't know so far. Then Swapadani cha varanyante. He explains in detail what is the meaning of word adhyasa. Swapadani. So if Bhashyakara uses words which are not known so far, then those words are also explained, and that also becomes a part of Bhashya. Bhashyam Bhashyavido Viduhu. Iti Bhashya Lakshanam. Then Purnanandi explains that. Yatra Artha Varanyate Tad Bhashyam. Suppose it was only said, Bhashyam is that where the meaning of sutra is expounded. Suppose you had only said that much, then what? Iti Ukte. No, where the meaning is expounded is called Bhashya. Suppose you said that, then Sagarage Varnasyabi Bhashyatva Prasangaha. So anything, you talk about Sagar and Giri, the ocean and mountains and rivers, etc., all of them will fall in the category of Bhashya. Because where Arthaha Varnyate, where the meaning expounded, then any explanation or any exposition will be called Bhashya. So Sutrartho Varnate Yatra. Where the meaning of sutra is expounded, not just meaning of anything else. Alpaksharam, asandigdham, saravat, vishwatomukham, ityadi visheshana vishishtam, sangrahavakyam, sutra shabdartha. What is sutra? Alpaksharam, few words, minimum words. Asandigdham leaves no doubt, which is doubtful, by the way. Because if sutra does not leave doubt, that's a doubtful thing. Because sutras have brought about so many different commentaries, so people question whether this meaning, this particular character sutra is applicable to any sutra at all. No, it seems. But anyway, to us, there is no doubt. So, Saravat, Sar means that which is contains essence. Vishwatomukham is available for different, it conveys different kinds of ideas. So that expression which is possessed of these characteristics is called Sutra. Tathacha Shruti Smrutyoho Sutratva Sambhavat. And therefore, Upanishad also is called Sutra. Upanishad Vakya also can be classified as Sutra. Why? Because Alpaksharam, Asandigdham, Saravat, Vishwatomukh. Therefore, Bhashyakara's Bhashya on Upanishad also is called Bhashya. Why? Because Upanishad mantras also can fall in the category of Sutra. Even Smruti, certain Smrutis also, like Manusmruti, etc., any very brief, the capsule ideas are given, then the commentaries written on them can also be called Bhashya. In particular, only Bhagavad Gita, by the way. So, Bhagavad Gita is Smruti. And therefore, what Shankaracharya has, the exposition is also called Bhashya there. So, Bhagavad Gita, that is also Bhashya, Upanishad also Bhashya, and Brahma Sutra Bhashya. So, Shruti Smrutyo Sutratva Sambhavat Shruti Smruti Sutranam Yad Bhashyam Tat Sadharanam Idam Lakshanam Bhavati. And so, this Bhashya definition is not confined only Brahma Sutra Bhashya, but can also be extended to the Upanishad as well as Bhagavad Gita. Giri Nadi Pratipad Kavye Sangraha Vakyatva Bhavad Na Sutratvam. All these kavyas, which they keep on expounding in great detail all the marriages and every day that the decoration, they do not fall in the category of Sutra. Says Giri Nadi Pratipad Kavya. All the kavyas which keep on describing in great detail all the mountains and forests and everything else, Sangraha Vakyatva Bhavat. They are not called Sangraha Vakya, meaning they are not in brief statements explaining a great meaning. Na Sutratvam, therefore commentary on that will not, they are not in Sutras, and commentary on them also is not Sutra, unless somebody sees Sutratvam in them, so, which people do. Iti, because there are 8 commentaries, 8 at least we know, and many more on Ramcharitmanas. So they see Sutra in every chopai there. But anyway, so it requires a lot of Shraddha and a lot of thinking. Itana Bhashya Lakshanasya Ativyapti. Otherwise, every commentary will become Bhashyam, which is now only commentary on Sutra is called Bhashya. Vartika Vyavrutyasam Sutranukaribihi. There are other expositions on Sutra called Vartika. Therefore, and then Vartika is there, Karikas are there. So what is Vartika? Vartika also is Vritti. It is also an exposition. But there, Vartika, what it does? Uktam, Anuktam, Duruktam. What is said by the Sutra, what is not said by the Sutra, and what is improperly said by the Sutra. So Vartikakara sometimes takes an exception to what the Sutra has to say, and the Sutra Pratikula Varnasyapi Sambhavad. Panini Maharshi wrote Sutras on Vyakaranam, and Katyayana wrote this Vartika. Then he showed that 1500 Sutras are defective. Can you imagine that? Of the 4,000 odd Sutras of Panini, there are people who find defects there, And this Katyayana showed 1500 Sutras are defective. Then came Bhashyakara, Patanjali, and showed that all those, there is no defect at all. So great tasks have already been performed. Therefore, we are clear about grammar, but there was a time when there have been a lot of confusion. When such a great one as Katyayana comes, a very great man, they say he was even smarter than Panini. They were so classmates, and that fellow was southerner, this Panini must have been a northerner, I don't know what it is. But then he wrote this Vartika, which completely destroyed almost. And so it seems Panini performed Tapasya again, and so then the Shesha and Sheshanaga said, okay, I'll come and clarify everything. So Sheshanaga was born as Patanjali, and he wrote a Mahabhashya. That's the first Bhashya really. We call it Mahabhashya because we call these things Bhashya. So in order to distinguish, we call it Mahabhashya. But that is when grammarians, other than Vedantins, when they say Bhashyakara, means Patanjali. And Vartikakara means this Katyayana. But Sutra Pratikula Varnanasyapi Sambhavat, since the Vartika is an exposition wherein he may present ideas which oppose what the Sutrakara has to say, Bhashyakara doesn't do that. Vakyahi Sutranukarivihi. Bhashya is an exposition wherein there are statements which are concurrent with sutra, idea of the sutra. Tad vyavrutti bodhya, vritti vyavrutyasam swapadani. And also, there are vrittis means brief expositions. Very brief. They are not bhashya because swapadani cha varnyante. Bhashyakara also expounds his own terms. And that is not done in vritti. Therefore, vritti is another kind of exposition, a brief exposition. Bhashya is a relatively enlarged exposition which expounds the meaning of sutra and also any new terms that are mentioned by Bhashyakara himself. Okay, now, so we have come up to introduction, still not quite begun. Yushmad asmat pratyegocharayoho, okay. But before we begin, there is some problem here. Says Purnanandiya on the page 16, Sarvada sarvakaryeshu nasti tesham mangalam yesham rudistho bhagavan mangalayatanam harihi. Says whenever you undertake a task, yesham rudistho bhagavan mangalayatanam harihi. So those people who remember Hari and then undertake the task. So when Hari, who is mangalayatanam, very abode of all auspiciousness, and Hari can be replaced by Hara also, that's no problem. But then the point is that Bhagavan or Lord is the abode of all the auspiciousness. And whenever we perform a task, keeping that Lord in our heart, then there cannot be any obstacles because He is the abode of all auspiciousness. So it is said, Sarvada sarvakaryeshu, Sarvada at all times, sarvakaryeshu, in all the actions. Nasti tesham amangalam. Those people do not have any amangalam, no inauspiciousness, no obstacles they come across. Esham rudistho bhagavan mangalayatanam harihi. In whose heart there is Hari, who is the very abode of all the auspiciousness. In whose heart He is, then there will be no obstacles in the fulfillment of the task. It is Smriti. This is what the Smriti says. Then, Vishishta Achara Paripalanaya Vignopashamanaya cha Vishishta Ishtadevata Tattvanusmarana Lakshanam Mangalam Grantha Karna Rupa Karyaramba Samaya Kritam Sri Bhashyakarnite Abhiprete Dushayri Tanna. Some people say, how come when Bhashyakara started writing Bhashya, he doesn't seem to bother about remembering God at all? What sort of a thing is this? So you must have Mangalacharanam, prayer, remembering God, and then commencing, seeking the blessings. So everybody seeks anugraha of the Lord so that the obstacles be eliminated. And also, suppose some people do not directly have to mention it because they are absorbed in God. And therefore they don't have to mention, but then also they make it a point to mention. Why? Vishishta Achara Paripalanaya. So that other people, when they start writing something, or when they start expounding something, at least they will follow the lesson. What did Bhashyakara do? He always remembered his teacher. He always remembered God, And therefore, Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam, Tamagocharam, Govindam Paramanandam, Sadgurum Pranatosmiham. So, Shishtachara. Shishta Achara. Achara or a conduct which is performed by Shishta. Means the learned people, cultured people. That's called Shishta Achara. Vishishta Achara and Vishishta Achara. Highly cultured people. Paripalanaya. So what the great people, what Shishtachara or the Achara, the great people conduct or carry out, that sets a trend. So that lesser people also will follow the trend. That's why we, to make sure that our children gain the right samskars, we ourselves implement those things in our life. Because merely Upadesha doesn't work, you have to demonstrate. And so the elders should demonstrate by their very conduct what the younger ones should do. Also they tell us, don't do what I do, do what I say. That's how they want to control us, that's one thing. But then people don't get controlled much too long, They say, alright, you are saying one thing and doing something else, then I will also say one thing and do something else. And so there must be, that's why doing and saying, there must be concurrence there, alignment. Anyway, Vignopashamanaya cha. Not only that, there is a Vishishta Achara, Shishtachara, but then Vignopashamanaya cha, for elimination of vigna or obstacles also. Vishishta Ishtadevata Tattva Anusmaran Lakshanam Mangalam Mangalacharanam Mangala Acharanam. So beginning with Mangala. What is the nature of Mangala? Ishtadevata Tattva Anusmaran Lakshanam Smaran. Remembering the Tattva. Remembering the Ishtadevata. And Tattva of the Ishtadevata. When you use the word Rama or Krishna or Shiva, it is not merely remembering that name or remembering a certain form, but remembering also Tattva, what that name, what is the principle that the name stands for. So, Vishishta Ishtadevata Tattvanusmaran Lakshanam Mangalam. Mangalam of the nature of remembrance of Lord, and what the meaning of that, meaning of the Lord is, remembering that. Remembrance is called Mangalam. And generally that remembrance is expressed as a verse or as a prayer verse in the beginning. Grantha Karana Rupa Karyaramba Samaya Kritam. This always, it is customary to do this Mangalacharanam at the Karyarambhe when you commence any Karya of the nature of Grantha Karanam. So any task, when you undertake task of the nature of writing a book or a text, in this case writing Bhashya, in the beginning of the task, this kind of Mangalacharanam should be done. Tat na kritam bhashyakarena. People say Bhashyakara has not done that. Yushma Dashmat, all right away he starts. He doesn't remember God, he doesn't remember his Guru, doesn't remember anything. And therefore there is an akshepa here, that Bhashyakara has failed to begin the work with Mangalacharanam. And therefore we will not study it. There are people who will not touch it. This prasada, suppose you distribute prasada. Is there tulsi in this prasada? No, we won't take this prasada. There are people who don't take prasada if there is no tulsi there, because that is what makes it auspicious. And so if there is no tulsi, we don't accept it. Similarly, however great that prasada may be, however great your text may be, there is no Mangalacharanam, well, we won't touch it. And therefore, for their benefit and for our benefit that they should study, we have to establish that Bhashyakara has in fact done the Mangalacharanam. So, Arambasaya Mangalam Krutam Sri Bhashyakarana. The Sri Bhashyakara has in fact done this Mangalacharanam. It is Abhipretya. Keeping that in mind, Dushayati, this Tika, the Ratna Prabhakara, Dushayati, he dismisses the idea that Mangalacharanam is not there. So on page 15 it is said, very briefly. Well, okay, I didn't read one sentence there. Before that there was a sentence here. Etena Sutrartha Asparshitvat Adhyasa Grantha Anabhashyamini Nirastam Arthikartha Sparshitvat. Somebody said Adhyasa Bhashya is not Bhashya. It doesn't discuss Brahma Sutra. So, Sutrartha Asparshitvat. What is Bhashyam? Sutrartha Varnate Varnate Yatra. Bhashya is that which only expounds the meaning of Sutra. Adhyasa Bhashya does not expound meaning of any Sutra. And if somebody said Adhyasa Bhashya is not Bhashyam, because it does not fulfill the criterion of Bhashyam, which should be an exposition on Sutra. Sutrartha Asparshitvat. Since Bhashya does not touch or does not relate to the meaning of Sutra, Adhyasa Grantha na Bhashyam. Somebody said this Adhyasa Bhashyam, Adhyasa Grantha is not Bhashyam, it is Nirastam. Says that I dismiss. Why? Arthikartha Sparshitvat. What is the suggested meaning or indicated meaning? So that sutra indicates that there is kartavyata. Therefore there is vishaya prayojanata. Therefore there is adhyasa. This is all indicated by sutra, and therefore indirectly it is an exposition of sutra alone, and therefore it also is included as bhashya. Otherwise we won't study that part. These are people like that. This adhyasa grantha is not bhashya. It's for somebody else, not for us. Is all for us because it indirectly discusses only that. Yattu Mangalacharana Bhavat Avyakhyayamidam Bhashyamiti. Alright, Bhashyakara may have written, but why are you writing commentary? Somebody asks him. Avyakhyayamidam Bhashyam. This Bhashya should not be explained, or you should not discuss this Bhashya. Why? Mangalacharana Bhavat. Because Bhashya does not begin with Mangalacharana, and therefore you should not discuss this Bhashya. Idam Bhashyamiti. That's what somebody Tanna says. No, that's not so. Why? Sutaram Itaretara Bhava Anupatti Ityanta Bhashya Rachanasam
तदर्थस्य सर्वोपद्रवरहितस्य विज्ञानघन प्रत्यगर्थस्य तत्वस्य स्मृतत्वात् अतः निर्दोषत्वात् इदम व्याख्यायम. Because he will justify the Tikagara, why he is writing Tika, says nirdosham idam vyakhyayam. That Vyakhya certainly must be written. Why? Because this we will read now, this first sentence, then we will know what it means. Okay, let us read the first sentence of the Bhashya. Page 15 of this book, and then what is the page there? Huh? Page 4 in that big book, and some other page in some other book. But that's how the Bhashyakara writes like this. Says here, Yushmat Ashmat Pratyaya Gocharayoho Vishaya Vishayinoho Tamah Prakashavata Viruddha Swabhavayoho Itaretara Bhavanupapattau Siddhayam Tadharmanamapi Sutaram Itaretara Bhava Anupattihi. Now page 25. Ityataha Asmat Pratyaya Gochare Vishayini Chidatmake Yushmat Pratyaya Gocharasya Vishasya Tadharmanancha Adhyasaha Tadviparyayena Vishayinaha Tadharmanancha Vishaye Adhyasaha Mithya Iti Bhavitum Yuktam. This is Purvapaksha up to this point. Says Yushmat Ashmat Pratyaya Gocharayoho Vishaya Vishayinoho. Vishaya means object, Vishaya means subject. Vishaya Vishayinoho, of the object and subject. What do you mean by object? Yushmat Pratyaya Gocharaha Vishaya. Vishaya, the object that is referred to by the Pratyaya or the concept. Yushmat means you. Yushmat means you. So object is that which is referred to by the concept you. And what is subject? Vishayi means subject. Vishayasya asti the Vishayi, subject. And subject is what? Asmat Pratyaya Gocharaha Vishayi. Subject is the one who is referred by the concept of I. So that which is referred to by I is subject, and that which is referred to by you is object. He says Tamah Prakashavat Viruddha Swabhavayoho. Both of these are totally contradictory in nature. Tamah Prakashavat, light, like light and darkness. Just as light and darkness are totally opposed, meaning they can never be together. Where light is, darkness can never be. And therefore they are what we call mutually exclusive. Where one is, the other cannot be. That is called Viruddha Swabhavayoho. And so Yushmat and Asmat are Viruddha Swabhava. Why? Where you is, I cannot be. Where I is, you cannot be. Idam Aham Bhashyakara does not use, there is a reason for that. Why does Bhashyakara say Yushmat Asmat and not Idam Asmat? You know? Because there is a reason. But definitely you can never be I, and I can never be you. This can be I. Sometimes for I, we do use the pronoun this body, this fellow that I am, you know, this person that I am, this person that you are. So sometimes that pronoun this is used for I as well as you. And therefore this is not necessarily opposed to I, because this pronoun this can also be used for I. And therefore they are not mutually exclusive. I does not exclude this, and this does not necessarily exclude I. But nobody ever says I who is such, you such as I, you know. So for I, the pronoun you is never used, and for you, the pronoun I is never used. Therefore always mutually exclusive. Tamah Prakashavat Viruddha Swabhavayoho Itaretara Bhava Anupapattau. And therefore those which cannot remain in one place, in one location, in one locus, there cannot be confusion or an error between the two. That one can attain the nature of the other. Of course, like the iron and fire can be in one locus. So the iron can assume the attributes of fire, and fire can assume the attributes of iron, because iron and fire are not mutually exclusive. It's not that where the iron is, fire cannot be, or where the fire is, iron cannot be. They can be in one locus, and therefore that mutual adaptation of the characteristics of the other is possible. But light can never adopt the characteristics of darkness, nor can darkness adopt the characteristics of light. And therefore, similarly, you and I, which are totally opposed to each other or exclusive of each other, doesn't make sense that they can adopt each other's characteristics. Itaretara bhava anupattau siddhayam. There is siddhi. That adhyasa is not possible. What is adhyasa? Itaretara bhava anupattau. Tadatma is not possible. Oneness is not possible. Relationship is not possible. No relationship is possible between light and darkness. Cannot see eye to eye. When one is, the other cannot be. Where the other is, one cannot be. And so where the you is, I cannot be. Where the I is, you cannot be. Never. There is no way that you can assume the attributes of I and I can assume the attributes of you. That you can be confused for I and I can be confused for you. That can never happen. Anupattau. Anupatti is what? It is not tenable that itaretara bhava, that you can become I and I can become you. That is not possible, because they are mutually exclusive. Itaretara anupattau siddhayam. When that is first already established, tad dharmanam api, then where is the question of the attributes of you being taken, assumed by I? When I can never mistake myself as you, and I can never mistake you as I, certainly your qualities cannot be mistaken as my qualities, and my qualities can never be mistaken as your qualities. And therefore, tad dharmanam api sūtram itaretara bhava anupattihi. Okay? First anupatti is siddha. Because of mutual exclusion, therefore the anupatti or untenability of the confusion or the tadatmya of the dharma also is established. Ityatah, therefore, asmat pratyaya gochare vishayani chidatmage. Who is vishayi? Atma, the self, the subject. Who is referred to by the concept asmat or I? Who is vishayi, the subject? Chidatmage, who is conscious entity, who is conscious being. And what is Yushmat? Yushmat pratyagocharasya vishayasya. That vishaya, the object is that which is referred to as Yushmat or you. And what is the dharma of that you? Jada. So that you, meaning this object is always Jada. Subject is Chetana. Therefore, Jada cannot be Chetana, Chetana cannot be Jada. And therefore, tad dharmanam chadyasa. Nobody takes oneself as Jada and nobody takes a Jada as Chetana. And so also, the dharma of the Jada cannot be taken by me, nor my dharmas cannot be mistaken to be those of Jada. Tad viparyena vishayana tad dharmanam cha vishayadhyasa. Or by reverse, that the dharma of the Vishayi upon the Vishaya mithyayati bhavitum yuktam. This is not possible. This is how the Akshepa Bhashya this is called. Adhyasa Akshepa. And we'll have plenty of opportunity to discuss this. But the idea is that this is how Bhashyakara begins the Bhashya. By Akshepa. That Adhyasa is possible. Where there is an occasion to commit an error. They don't say Adhyasa is not possible. That rope can be taken to be snake. Possible. Or this mother of pearl or shell can be taken to be silver. Because there are certain similarities between shell and silver, or some similarity between rope and snake. The rope also has some curvatures and so forth, and snake also has them, and therefore a rope can be mistaken to be snake, alright. But that I can be mistaken as you, or you can be mistaken as I, darkness can be mistaken as light, and light can be mistaken as darkness. No way, not possible. And the adhyasa of this nature is not possible. It is anupapannam, means untenable, means illogical. It doesn't make sense. This is how adhyasa akshepa. Akshepa means negation or refutal or dismissal. So once for somebody questions, akshepa means questions very adhyasa. And then the answer is given. This is how, so it was said, akshepa, adhyasa akshepa samadhana bhashyabhyam. The Bhashyakara arrives at the Vishaya Prayojana by discussing adhyasa, which is first refuted and then established. Okay. Now where is Mangalacharanam here? Now these people want to say that Bhashyakara has not failed to follow Shishtachara. That is just their Shraddha in Bhashyakara. That he cannot fail to follow any Shishtachara. He is perfect. He is Sarvajna. That he cannot make any mistake, not a word can be wrong. This is our Shraddha. Bhashyakara in turn has a Shraddha that Shruti can never be wrong. This is his Shraddha. Since Veda says something, it must be right. So we say when Bhashyakara says something, it must be right. These people say Bhashyakara cannot transgress the Shishtachara. And therefore, where is the Mangalam? There must be involved. So even though it may not be directly mentioned, there is an indirect mention. That Bhashyakara must have in his mind the Tattvanusmaranam, remembrance of God. And is it there or not? So says yes, Sutaram, Itaretara Bhava, Anupatti Ityanta Bhashya Rachanatam. In order to say that the adhyasa or the error between you and I is impossible, Tadarthasya, so you is something and I is something, Yushmat and Asmat. So when Bhashyakara writes the word Yushmat, you, Bhashyakara also must remember what is the meaning of the word you. And when Bhashyakara says Asmat or I, Bhashyakara also must remember what is the meaning of the word I. You happens to be Brahman and I happens to be Atma, and therefore by very usage of the pronoun you and I, because Brahman is Sarvanama, you know. So Brahman is Nama of everything, Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma, and therefore by the very mention of the you and I, and not I and you, because you is God, you see, and then I comes. So you and I, so very mention of the words you and I requires Bhashyakara to have in mind what the you and I stand for. And what does I stand for? Sarvopadravarhitasya Vijnana Ghana Pratyagarthasya Tattvasya Smutatvat. So I, who am I? Sarvopadravarhitoham, Sarvopaplavarhitah. So I am one who is free from all upadrava, free from all suffering, all unhappiness. Vijnana Ghana Pratyagartha, who is Vijnana Ghana, of the nature of Vijnana.